Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it very much. Yes, I did play Big Ten basketball, and I know I'm in SEC country. And yes, I have become a fan of SEC basketball, and certainly the Wildcats. It's hard not to when you live here, and frankly, with the success that they have. So appreciate everybody's time this morning. I just want to give a few remarks before we get on to the main program. For more than a decade, Fifth Third Bank has been a presenting sponsor of the Good Morning Bluegrass series, a place where important conversations take place. We're fortunate to have outstanding institutions of higher education here in Central Kentucky. Our local colleges and universities help cultivate successful and productive individuals, businesses, and communities. Fifth Third Bank has partnered with each of these institutions in various capacities throughout the years because we understand the incredible impact that they make. Fifth Third is committed to investing in education. For example, Fifth Third Bank is sponsoring the University of Kentucky's First Scholars Program. This is a program for first-generation college students. It provides scholarships as well as academic, social, and leadership guidance to participants as they work toward being the first person in their family to earn a college degree. Fifth Third is also helping students become more college ready. We sponsor financial literacy programs for elementary, middle school, and high school students in Kentucky. The bank sponsors Dave Ramsey's Foundations in Personal Finance curriculum that is taught in nearly 100 high schools throughout the Commonwealth. We must all do our part to promote and support education. Fifth Third Bank is committed to doing its part. Thank you very much.
To kind of launch our program today, I want to throw out a couple things. John, you're so tall, I have to do some major readjustment here. I may have to. A couple statistics. Here in Central Kentucky, we rank 13th in the nation for the percent of people over the age of 25 with a BS degree. U.S. Census data. We rank 7th in the United States of America with individuals aged 25 and older with advanced degrees. It's one of our most strategic one of the best strategic advantages we have is we're out promoting Central Kentucky to the world. We use that statistic quite a bit, and we do get a lot of eyebrows raised and a lot of eyes get really big and they look at us. And I have to tell you, it's a major selling point. Another very strong strategic advantage is that we have between 12 and 13,000 college graduates every year. So when you add that in, that big quotient about having a skilled workforce and having the talent, we got the talent and we've got a lot of numbers. And so we spend a lot of time at Commerce Lexington with our colleagues in economic development and with you trying to figure out how do we rein in and keep a lot of those individuals here or have them come back at some point in time in their careers. So higher education is a strategic advantage for Central Kentucky. We, as everyone in this group, this is a who's who group. We need to know everything we can about our education system, K through 16 and on. And we especially need to know when we have a lot of new faces or even one new face, because they can dramatically impact and do, but they can dramatically change the direction of our success here based on their leadership. So today we're going to introduce you to some of the new faces here in Central Kentucky of higher ed. And who better to be the master of ceremonies than Dr. Eli Capilouto, who some might say is the new face, but you've been here too long to have that distinction anymore. You've been here long enough. You've proven yourself to be one of the nation's most innovative university presidents. You arrived during one of Kentucky's most financially challenged eras, and you led UK through significant budget cuts. And here's the most important thing. Never once did any of us hear you complain. You took some of the most dramatic challenges that any university president could ever face, and you turned them into opportunities. And we heard you say that an awful lot. It's not the hand we're dealt, it's what we do with the hand that we have. And so I'm very honored to have you act as our master of ceremonies this morning and have come forward University of Kentucky President Dr. Eli Capilouto. Thank you, sir.
Shasky feels when he talks to people. This is amazing. I mean,
He's a little bit taller than you are right now.
that's something. Anyway, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Commerce Lexington. It is a delight for me to be here. I do thank Fifth Third Bank for your support. Over a third of our students at the University of Kentucky are those first-generation students. Because of your support and that of others, we're achieving remarkable success with that group. And they need a little extra help when you're trying to navigate a college life, when you don't have a family you can turn to as a resource, an experienced resource. So I am delighted not to be the freshman anymore. I'm only a junior, and that makes me a sort of senior amongst the group. I remember, fellow presidents, when I was at your stage of this, and I was invited here 2.5 years ago. I was still in the stage that I was pretending I knew what I was doing. Many people think I still am, my detractors especially. But I want to tell you before I introduce every one of you, you're not going to find a more supportive and committed community in all sorts of ways. So you have landed in what I would consider to be higher education heaven. And I want to welcome each one of you to the stage and tell you just a little bit about each of our guests this morning. First, Dr. Michael Benson. He was born in Salt Lake City, raised in Texas. He got his doctorate in modern Middle Eastern history from Oxford. Just sent me a book that he'd authored, which I found particular interest. Previously the president of Southern Utah University, he assumed his role, we share something in common, as the 12th president of Eastern Kentucky University on August 1st, 2013. So next, Dr. Michael Green. Dr. Green's a North Carolina native, a doctorate in New Testament and early Christianity from the University of Virginia. He was previously provost of Campbell University, a Baptist college in Buies Creek, North Carolina, and he recently assumed his role as the 24th president of Georgetown College. And finally, Dr. John Marsden. John moved to Kentucky from Wilson, North Carolina. We got a raid going on in North Carolina. Received his doctorate in environment and behavior with a minor in gerontology from the University of Michigan. Previously the provost of Barton College in North Carolina. He officially assumed his role as the 10th president of Midway College in February 2013. I'm happy to invite them to our stage. I'm going to give each one of them an opportunity to make some brief opening comments. Then we're going to open the floor for questions. Gentlemen. Okay. Good morning again. Good morning. We can sit, and this is such a great improvement. Not only did I not know what I was doing when I got here, when I attended this, they gave me this chair that I sat in, and I found my knees on the bottom of my chin. And so this is a better perspective, I promise you. So let's give each one of these gentlemen an opportunity to make some opening remarks, and I'll stay in the order that I presented everyone. I'll start with Dr. Benson.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate what Danny said, and also John about education. I'm the product of a family that put a premium on pursuing education beyond high school. My mother is from a small farming community in southern Alberta, Canada. Never finished her degree. My dad went to Stanford, did a master's degree in education, but while he was there, started selling cookware door to door to pay tuition, and that was his career. And they had 6 kids. I'm the youngest of those 6 kids, and among the 6 kids are now 5 bachelor's degrees, 4 masters, a doctorate, and a Pulitzer Prize. My brother's the one that won the Pulitzer Prize, not any of the rest of us. But and that was a direct product of my parents recognizing that the one great equalizer in life is the ability to pursue an education and the tools that gives an individual. So I will be forever grateful to my parents for the sacrifices they made to give the kids things they never had. John knows this, and we had a chance to share the podium yesterday in a similar panel discussion. But every chance I get here in the Commonwealth, I talk about the importance of an investment on the state's part in education. Two of my early experiences here, before I started in August, I had a chance to go with Bob and others to the Washington Fly-In, and I saw immediately with that group this collective commitment to education in our state and how impressed I was with that. And 2 days after I started at Eastern, we had a meeting of the Bluegrass Higher Ed Consortium. I see Rob and his colleagues, and the diversity of the institutions represented. We are private schools, we're large public comprehensive, we're Research One universities, and in a relatively small geographic area to have this concentration of institutions is a tremendous resource. I don't know if you all appreciate it. As an outsider coming in, I was really bowled over by just how fortunate we are to have that commitment to education, but also the product of those institutions is an educated workforce. And so those two experiences taught me right off the bat that, as Eli said, I've come to higher ed heaven, and we love being here, and we're honored to be part of this endeavor. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Dr. Green.
Yes,
you're up.
good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Capilouto. And I'm enjoying this John Chasky look here as well. This is nice to see a crowd from this venue here. I'm Dwayne Green. I am recently elected as the president of Georgetown College. I am the newcomer on the block here. I really am the new kid on the block. I'm 6 weeks into a college presidency, and the fire hose is still, flowing, but that's just great. I'm coming from a context in North Carolina where I have been accustomed to being in a fine state around a lot of fine people, and I'm finding that to be precisely the case in Kentucky. I'm enjoying it very much. My wife is with me today here at the front, Carolyn. We have been married 33 years and enjoying Kentucky very much. We had not anticipated this, but it came along, and it's been very nice to this point. There's some interesting things that I'm finding about Kentucky. One is that I'm accustomed to being in a state where blue is a pretty strong color, and I'm having
certain blue.
I'm having to.
I made that mistake the first day.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I'm having to shift the shade of blue a bit here, and it's going quite well, as a matter of fact. I would say that not everyone in North Carolina is a huge Duke fan or Chapel Hill fan. I mean, there are other colors down there too, and when you work in a context as I am in now, where the colors are orange and black, and interestingly enough, I have come from an institution where the colors are orange and black, then your blood kind of flows orange, and blue is sort of a shade of orange, but enjoying that portion. And another interesting thing for a North Carolinian is to come to a state where I find myself in northern Kentucky and still realizing that I'm in the South. And I find that a bit interesting as well. I went to a light show the other night at the horse farm and saw that this is the Southern Light Show. And for a North Carolinian in northern Kentucky to be regarded as still kind of in the South is a bit unusual. So I'm getting accustomed to that as well. But we're enjoying Kentucky in our brief time here. I've been very fortunate to have been around the state quite a lot in these 6 weeks and met many very fine people, finding that the Georgetown loyalty is very deep and it's very widespread in this state. The context from which I'm coming is a context where I've been accustomed to very fine higher education. Many of you, perhaps all, would be aware that in North Carolina, just as in Kentucky, there are very fine academic institutions of all sorts. There are the large university types, and there are many small colleges there, and they work well, and I'm pleased to know that that's the case in Kentucky as well. I'm thrilled to know of the traditions and the progress and the academic strength that is at Georgetown College, and that was much of what attracted me here. And I'm glad to come and be a part of that and join my other colleagues in higher education and in this community in Kentucky. So we're looking forward to it very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel this morning.
Dr. Marsden,
Okay, my turn.
your turn.
Thank you for the invitation this morning from Commerce Lexington. I'm happy to be here. And I became the 10th president of Midway College on February 1st. Ironically, when we were relocating from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I had been provost at Mount Mercy University, to Wilson, North Carolina, so that I could become provost at Barton College, we actually stayed overnight in Lexington because it was the halfway point. And we had dinner at the Blue Martini, and we were looking out over the city of Lexington and thought, wow, this would be a nice place to live, never realizing that we were going to end up back here. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I'm a first-generation college student and a first-generation American. My parents immigrated at different times from Ireland. My father had not even completed high school, and he moved here at 22. He had saved for 4 years for his airfare, did not have a lot of family support to come here, but came for economic opportunity. My mother came a little bit later. They met in New York City, and I grew up on Long Island as a result. They always valued education, and they worked very hard to ensure that the three of us, my brother, my sister, and I, would be able to go to the college of our choice when it was time. And they had three of us in college at the same time. My wife is from Huntsville, Alabama, and she grew up in the South, and we went through the whole North meets South transition a long time ago. Our respective mothers had very interesting questions. My mother-in-law asked what I thought about that war. And my mother asked Margaret, who's actually Mary Margaret Doyle, whether she was an Irish Catholic. She is a Baptist. I began my academic career as a teacher and scholar at a large research university. I taught at the undergraduate level as well as up to the doctorate level. I was very involved in research. I have authored, co-authored books in the areas of dementia, care settings, and assisted living. In case you haven't figured it out, my disciplines are architecture and gerontology. I had not planned to be an administrator. I ended up making the leap from the large public institution to a small private, and actually worked at a women's college, and then eventually became provost at Mount Mercy University and then Barton College. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about Midway College, because since I've been here, I've heard from people in the external community that Midway College is a for-profit college, an online college, a school of nursing, and a women's college. And in actuality, we are all of the above, except we are not a for-profit institution. We have a very, very complex mission because we serve many different student populations, which can make it confusing to some in terms of our identity. But we are Kentucky's only women's college. We serve traditional undergraduate women in our daytime program. And we also serve both men and women in our undergraduate evening accelerated programs and both men and women in our graduate programs. We have delivery formats both in-seat and online, and have majors in arts and sciences as well as equine, sports management, nursing and health sciences, business and teacher education. So a pretty well-rounded viewpoint. Just wanted to comment one more thing about the North and the South. When we were moving here, we were investigating schools for our son. He's almost 10, and we visited one school where the principal tried to tell us that Lexington was really the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And Margaret said, our son's not going to school there because we are still in the South.
Very good. Yesterday I had the chance to meet with Leadership Lexington group, and I was saying to Bob this morning, what you realize first and foremost is how bright our future is through the questions that are asked by that group. They're insightful, and they're clearly questions oriented towards our future. So we want to open the floor for questions. I believe we have someone who's circulating with a microphone. While we're doing that, though, I'm going to turn to our group here and ask them if they, from the information they've received thus far, do they have any early ideas about their campuses in terms of direction that they wanted to share with us. I'll start with you this time.
Yes, thank you. One of the things that attracted me to Georgetown was the academic strength that is there. And that strength has been well known in the liberal arts and science traditions. And as I just alluded to a moment ago, I have been very impressed as I have moved through Kentucky quite a lot over a few weeks and have seen surgeons, other physicians, attorneys, business people, educators throughout Kentucky who valued their experience at Georgetown so very, very much. They received an excellent academic preparation there, and they've gone on to wonderful careers. And through its history, so much of that has been this great strength in liberal arts and science tradition. One of the things that as we look through the years ahead at Georgetown, we will be looking at very carefully is the way in which we can maintain that very strong tradition in the liberal arts and sciences, and also move progressively into some areas that are a bit more related to the professions. I have come from a context in which that combination works very well, and there are many very fine institutions in Kentucky, North Carolina, and other states where a very strong tradition has been maintained in liberal arts and sciences, and also the realities of needing to continue to help prepare the students in the profession. So as I look on through the months and years that I will anticipate being at Georgetown, we want to give that a very close look. Again, maintaining that very great traditional strength, but being progressive and somewhat innovative and expanding on that for this area and for Georgetown College.
Thank you. Mike?
If you brush up on your Latin, you'll remember that alma mater, the school where you graduated, in Latin means nurturing mother. And so think about the kind of the metaphorical significance of that phrase for your school. In many ways, you arrive on a college campus, young, inexperienced, and that institution kind of gives birth to your social self, your intellectual self, gives you that kind of entree into adulthood, if you will. And so while I'll never be an Eastern Kentucky University graduate unless I choose to go back to school, which I did a couple years ago and finished a degree at Notre Dame 15 years after finishing my doctorate, which was a great experience because I think all of us should be lifelong learners. But that said, I can come to love an institution like Eastern Kentucky just like the graduates can. And I have in a very short period of time because I've recognized what it means to people. One thing I've come to appreciate in the Commonwealth is between the community college system and the institutions that we represent, Eli School, the University of Louisville, we have a whole bunch of points of entry for students. And if they need to start at a junior college or a community college or technical college and kind of get their academic sea legs under them, then triage to any of these other institutions or start at a private school where it's a kind of a little more manageable community. We have those opportunities. And we've always been at EKU the school of opportunity, that place where a student can come and in many cases be a first generation college graduate and change their generation, but also subsequent generations. We'll have graduation tomorrow on our campus, and I'll have the chance to ask all the first generation graduates to stand up. And over half that crowd will stand up. And if you want a moving experience to see those people, those graduates with their parents after getting photographs, and the folks that have sacrificed to give their sons and daughters that opportunity to have an education. That's what it's all about. We will continue to do that. We'll also continue to focus on the programs we do really well. Our nursing program, occupational health. Our justice and safety program is known the world over. We'll never compete at Eli's level in terms of athletics, although we can in some areas. And just 2 weeks ago, I went to Terre Haute to see our men's cross-country team finish 15th in the country, beating Notre Dame and Stanford and Michigan. Go Colonels.
Congratulations.
And that's the highest finish ever. And to see these young men, in this case it was our young men's team, with Eastern Kentucky across their jerseys, competing against Oregon and LSU and some of the great programs with about triple the resources, it was incredibly gratifying. And that's something we'll continue to do. We'll focus on what we do well and do it better, but also recognize we can't be everything to everybody.
Okay, well, I've been at my institution a little bit longer than both Mike and Dwayne. I had started in February, and so what I did initially was to meet with each faculty and staff member individually, which is possible at a smaller institution. And that was to try and assess the institution through their eyes. We also administered a survey across campus, and that was to all of our student populations, the faculty, staff, our alumni, and our trustees, again, to assess Midway's strengths and challenges and opportunities. And that was a way for me to learn about the institution pretty quickly. It's certainly well known that we've had some challenges on our campus, and as a result, we've had to move forward very quickly with a strategic plan. And I've been at institutions where we have developed plans in a year or sometimes longer, and we developed ours in a matter of months at Midway College in order to move the institution forward. It was recently approved by the Board of Trustees. And our strategic plan talks about our future. We came up with one that's short-term in nature. It's 3 years. It includes many operational fixes as well as some larger ideas for the future. But in terms of directions we are heading, we plan to explore university status. That's something that we think will more aptly capture the complexity of our mission. And we also intend to add more graduate programs and recruit students internationally and establish more international programs. And we think that will help with that university status. We're also looking at reintroducing our values. We are a faith-based institution. We're associated with the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. For many reasons, we lost sight of those values. And so we are now making sure that all of our students and employees are aligned with the mission and values of the institution, because that should really drive the culture of our organization. And with that in mind, we're really trying to strengthen our core in relation to personnel and finances, marketing and technology, and best practices. We're also working on learning and co-curricular programming and community partnerships. And with that as a foundation, we do, as I mentioned before, intend to add some graduate programs as well as some undergraduate ones. Our changing demographics have pointed us in the direction of recruitment among the Hispanic population and certainly expanding our non-traditional student population, since that's one of the fastest growing student demographic populations right now. And we've also established an Office of Career Readiness in order to help prepare our students who are coming to college, since the primary purpose these days is to secure a job. So that just gives you an idea of some of the directions in which we're heading. We do want to strengthen athletics, and I know that Bob Quick sort of joked about Midway College and athletics, but I will point out that our archery team, which is in its first year, are national champions in the 3D Hunter division.
All right. All right.
Very good. Well, I think all of you will agree with me that these gentlemen share a lot of things in common. First, they're extremely bright, have wonderful wisdom that they're going to impart, but you can also tell they're leading with heart and soul, and it shows. So what about questions from the audience?
Gentleman Robert Riggs, not so much as a question as to compliment you on taking a position here in Central Kentucky and bringing your insight and leadership. One thing you may want to embrace as you go back to your institutions, Kentucky today has more students studying aviation and aerospace than any state in the nation, which is all STEM related. We've got 23 high schools with aviation programs, soon to have 25. Dr. Benson, you have a great aviation program, which I was honored to help Dr. Wilker get off the ground, no pun intended. And this semester was ranked #1 in the nation because it's the only institution that qualified all the FAA standards. Thank you all.
If I may, Eli, just to
Sure.
that point, you're exactly right. The FAA, as you know, there's a pretty acute challenge facing us in the country as it relates to shortage of pilots. And the FAA has certified 6 institutions, and EKU is one of them, with a new 1,000-hour flight hour kind of requirement. And I met the first graduate of that program about 3 weeks ago. And we're trying to address, this is a good example of an institution trying to address one of those challenges out there in the private sector with a program that we've adapted, gotten certified by the FAA. We do need some resources for hangar space and extend the runway. But we're very proud of our aviation program.
One of the things that I might mention also that I think in our own context each of us would share is is something that we have to continually be alert to, is to make sure that the wonderful programs that we have are not kept secret. And I mention that because, again, as a person relatively new on the scene, I'm very impressed with the range and the caliber and the depth of what is higher education in Kentucky. It's a very impressive thing. And I say that as a person, again, who has come from a context where there is very impressive higher education there as well. And to come to Kentucky and to see and begin to get a sense of not just the expanse, but the quality of what is here in medicine, in law, in undergraduate preparation, I think it's something of which Kentucky can be very, very proud. And I know that a lot of energy and a lot of money is spent to tell that story, but it's something that we all need to do better and do more and more of that, because Kentucky education, as I'm seeing, is quite a jewel in this country. And so as each of us in our context can help move that awareness forward, we certainly will want to do that.
Well said. John, would you like to
I'd
add?
just like to comment on the distinctiveness of that program, aviation. I mean, Midway is known for nursing and equine in particular, and many other majors. But as we think about the future, students are not going to college anymore for the love of learning necessarily, for an education to find themselves and then to go out in the world and make a difference. We'd all like to think that idealistically. But they're going to school for jobs. And it's going to be very important for us as higher education institutions to understand where those industry niches are, where market and mission intersect, and where we need to develop curriculums of the future. So it might be not unusual to see majors in cloud architecture or health information systems, cybersecurity, gaming design. I mean, those are things that I think all of us should be looking at as we develop those distinctive niches that meet some of those regional workforce needs and help prepare students for some of those jobs that may not yet even exist.
Very good.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. And just so you know, once you cross the Ohio River, you're in the South.
Okay.
I'll reassure my wife.
There you go. It's amazing what a difference that bridge makes. Now, I know Midway College was looking at maybe another pharmacy school.
You
Briefly.
had to bring that up.
I'm
didn't
sorry,
you?
but I had a friend of mine who was applying to pharmacy school, and they said the waiting line is really long, and I can only imagine there's a lot of people who maybe from Kentucky would like to be going to a Kentucky pharmacy school, and that demand is there. Is there any possibility of anybody starting up a couple more here or there around the state to meet that demand?
Well, go ahead.
We do not intend to pursue a school of pharmacy, I can assure you. Ironically, my wife is a pharmacist, and she hasn't practiced in a few years, but our understanding right now is that there really is not a shortage of pharmacists and that the demand is not as great as it had been at one time. And she is a licensed pharmacist and had been involved in recruitment when there was a shortage and had been working with different colleges and universities to bring them to out-of-state markets. But we don't see that so much in the industry right now. I believe UK has a college of pharmacy, so that need is being met. All of us are such different institutions, and we often want to build upon our strengths, particularly at the undergraduate level when we're developing graduate programs. And that's probably not a strength that we intend to pursue. University of Pikeville, for example, has their School of Osteopathic Medicine. And so they're offering something that's distinctive and that's more professionally oriented. And I think that they're probably heading in that direction because that's a need in that particular part of Kentucky. And I know they're looking at a college of optometry as well, and may look at dentistry in the future. Speaking on behalf of that president, he shared some of those comments yesterday. So I think all of us, different perspectives, we offer different things. We are interested in professionally oriented graduate programs. We may look at healthcare more specifically. We have a strong nursing base to work from because we are well known for our ADN and our RN to BSN programs at Midway. So we will look at an MSN, for example, and other healthcare programs, but certainly not School of Pharmacy.
I would speak to that as well. if you look at the development of pharmacy schools in the country and go back into the early 1980s, there had not been a pharmacy school begun in all of the United States for about 35 years until the mid-80s when Campbell University took that on in North Carolina. And it was quite a puzzle as to how a small university like that could do it. But it proved to be quite a helpful thing for Campbell, which is the university where I have just come as provost for a dozen years there. And it proved to be quite a strong program. So I would approach that question in terms of I never want to be in a situation where it's sort of a never say never. At this point in its life, Georgetown College is not prepared to begin a school of pharmacy, but that is an area where the field is not totally closed yet. The fact is that from about the mid-1980s until about the last 10 years, there were relatively few pharmacy schools developed. But over a period of time, it's hard to keep a secret the fact that a student can go and over a 5 to 6 year period receive an undergraduate degree in a PharmD and step into a position where they start with a 6-figure salary. And over a period of 20 years or so, so many other places begin to discover that there's tremendous potential there. So now over the last 10 to 15 years, there are a number of other pharmacy schools which have begun, and yet the field is not closed. In pharmacy and in other healthcare fields, there remains tremendous potential. So again, that would take a matter of evaluating the need in Kentucky, and I know that there are fine pharmacy schools here, but interesting that the pharmacy question is still there, yes.
Do you have another question?
Good morning. My name is Billy Peevler, and I'm the Executive Director of the Business and Education Network with Commerce Lexington. I'm also a Midway College graduate. And Dr. Marsden, this is to the whole panel, but Dr. Marsden made comments about the goal is our students graduating to get a job. So I was hoping that you could talk to us today about a few ways that you might be partnering with local businesses to ensure that your students are graduating with the skills that businesses need so that they're employable.
I guess I
You can start.
Sure. I mentioned before that there are specific skills that some employers are looking for, and that specialization is becoming increasingly important depending on what industry is demanding. But we also see that employers are looking very much for a lot of us also interested in the skills that we most closely associate with a liberal arts education. So they are looking for graduates who can think creatively and critically, who can analyze and solve problems, who can communicate effectively, work as a team, and have digital information fluency. Those are still very critical. Our students, at least we find at Midway, and I think you'll see this nationally too, are very interested in experiential learning and applied hands-on learning. And so what we have been able to do because of our location, for example, we have a very large, strong equine program, and we're surrounded by horse farms at Midway, so we're able to use those as internship sites for our students. We believe that we need to have a very strong relationship between Midway College and the city of Midway, so we have had students that have actually worked on projects of need for the city. So if the city has a specific project or something that they would like studied, our students are able to make that a class project. We've had student interns working with the Woodford Chamber of Commerce, again, getting that hands-on learning experience. We're exploring ways that can happen on our campus as well, because sometimes we can offer internship sites. We did have one student that worked with our Vice President of Marketing and College Communications last year who was interested in marketing, and it helped prepare her for her career. So I think that there's lots of different ways that we can do that. Mike mentioned the Bluegrass Higher Education Consortium, and right now that's made up of the 12 college and university presidents. We get together monthly, and we're really specifically looking at educational attainment and career readiness. And in fact, there is a subcommittee that's looking at career readiness, and so we're trying to have a better understanding of that so that we can meet those regional workforce needs.
Mike?
I think John said it very well. I'll just add this. We hear a lot of talk about STEM. They've actually added 2 other letters to that, STEM plus H, which is the healthcare professions. And I've advocated, along with my fellow liberal arts graduates, to add an A into that, so STEAM, the A representing the arts. I'm part of a national organization called the Association of American Colleges and Universities, and they do all sorts of longitudinal studies about what employers are looking for. And John spoke specifically about higher ed is known for a lot of things, but one thing we're not really known for at times is being all that nimble and being responsive to workforce demands. That's, I think, where a community college comes in, and they can do some of that kind of on-site training. But for us, it's really important to recognize that employers want students who can think creatively, who can reason, who can write, who can communicate, and the last one I've really come to appreciate is who have empathy. And when I say it's not just being tolerant, it's coming to a job, coming into a situation where you appreciate other people's differences, you can get along with other people, you can empathize with their perspective, and you can work collaboratively. And a lot of those, I think, byproducts tied directly to what I would consider an emphasis on cross-disciplinary experiences in one's undergraduate and graduate experience. In my previous institution, we were the Thunderbirds. And so we said every graduate from SUU is going to be a T-bird. And the T-bird represents that vertical axis, represents drilling down into one's discipline, whether it's chemistry or biology or English or sociology. But the horizontal one represents a whole breadth of experiences. Doing a service learning project, doing a capstone project, doing some kind of internship, whether it's in local government or at the legislature, doing a study abroad. And all those things take resources, but collectively as an institution, we've said we want graduates that are Ts, that have that experience, both in a discipline and also more broadly defined.
And I want simply to affirm what's been said here, that is the matter of realizing that academic institutions are not little enclaves unto themselves. They're not on their own little islands. They are part of larger communities. They are part of a larger culture. They are preparing students to have productive lives in that huge range of context in those communities and cultures. And so the extent to which you prepare students with the skills and the kind of preparation they have to be successful, that's what we are about. And the career centers and the internships and the other types of experiential programs that we have are all designed to move forward that whole concept of this interconnectedness of societies and communities and education. And so I affirm all that's been said on that, yes.
Very good.
I have the microphone.
Yeah.
Dr. Marsden and Dr. Green, sorry, Mike, I'm going to leave you out of this one. Would you speak to the challenges of running faith-based institutions in the current culture?
Yeah, I'll be glad to start with that. The question has to do with the challenge of running a faith-based institution in the culture. And for one thing, I would say that I find great strength that working at faith-based institutions has been in my career, and I find great strength in the preparation that faith-based institutions provide students. So they typically are smaller institutions. They typically are institutions where this matter of the close personal relationships, the mentoring, the care, that it's done in very fine ways. It certainly can be done in larger contexts as well, but it's perhaps a bit more challenging there. But in a context where you have your students to your home, you work with them in terms of the development of a value system, as well as the development of a skill package. I think that is some of the very finest in higher education. It's not to say that is easily done. The fact is that institutions that are faith-based institutions typically struggle with their identity in the public in terms of what is meant by the dimension and the levels of that faith-based commitment. And institutions have to handle those issues as well. I've regarded faith-based institutions, and I feel the same way about Georgetown College, that this is an institution where a student can come from a huge range of backgrounds and come and receive a very fine education, regardless of what that particular faith commitment has been in those backgrounds. We are a Baptist institution and proud to be a Baptist institution, but not an institution exclusively for Baptists in any way. As you would know from within any denomination, there are many different forms of those denominational loyalties. And so there are many different types of Baptists, as well as Presbyterians and Methodists and others throughout other faith traditions. And in a faith context of higher education, I want to see Georgetown, I believe it has been this way, and I want to see that continue as a place where students from a huge range of perspectives, quite a lot of diversity, can all come into a community and receive that fine education. So challenges, yes, but huge successes when you are open to that kind of diversity and welcoming attitude as well.
Well, research has shown that institutions that are faith-based tend to stress values that help promote citizenship, responsible citizenship, and ethical behavior among students who are graduates. So I think that's definitely one benefit. I worked previously at a Catholic institution. There can be a lot more challenges associated with the church's social teachings. So I remember getting a letter from a grandmother of a student who said she burned the textbook from the education class because there was a chapter devoted to working with gay and lesbian and transgender students, and that goes against the church's social teachings. There were times where you could have bishops intervening and selecting and uninviting commencement speakers because of their views. So there definitely can be challenges with certain religions. The Midway College is affiliated with the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. It's a very gentle religion. They are very open to all kinds of people. I would term it a gentle religion. We've also been trying to strengthen that presence on campus. We did not have a pastor before, we do now. We don't have a chapel on campus. We are partnering more with the churches in Midway. So, for example, the Christian Church is holding what they call their Epiphany Dinner on January 6th. They're going to hold it on our campus because we have a large gathering space. We recently had a Thanksgiving service for all of the churches in Midway. It was hosted at the Christian Church. The Midway College Chorale was there to sing during the service. So we're looking at trying to strengthen that relationship, and there's been little direct interference as some institutions have experienced that are faith-based.
Very good.
Judy, may I be left?
Sure.
I can't be left out, Judy. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm a graduate of two faith-based schools, Brigham Young and Notre Dame. And my brother-in-law, Bob, was the first to go to Notre Dame in our family. There are four of us that have earned degrees there. So he went in as a kind of unsuspecting Latter-day Saint and went into the registrar's office and said, well, I assume I need to take a class in Catholicism or the history of the church or New Testament teachings. And the woman in the office peered at him and she said, son, you know, we may be a Catholic school, but our religion here is football. So
I was about to add that
That's not even the South.
I've experienced two religions in higher education, University of Alabama and now University of Kentucky. They have similarities, and they don't have the bishop, but they have the NCAA every once in a while. Puts their nose into what you're doing, but anyway. That's a great question, Judy. Darby?
Yes, and thank you all for being here. It's a great discussion. In talking to young graduates in the last few years particularly, I'm astounded at the debt that many of them are coming out of school with. And could you talk a little bit about the challenges related to the cost to the students of education and what your thoughts are on that and where it might be going?
go ahead.
Yes, and there's no question but what the matter of the debt load, the expense of higher education, there's no question but that is a huge challenge for higher education generally. And attention has been brought to that in a much greater way over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, where it's going, I think one of the things that we are certainly seeing is that students and their families are being much more savvy shoppers than they were years ago. And much of that is simply driven by the financial realities that these families are facing. Over recent years, there have been increasing numbers of families who a parent loses a job, and the opportunity then for the child to attend the college or university where they had wanted to go, that becomes less realistic, and so they have to step to another option for their higher education. And that example is compounded hundreds of thousands of times over across this country because it's driven by financial realities. So it is certainly the case in public context, but it is no doubt a huge issue in a private context as well, where the education is usually a bit more expensive, and sometimes a lot more expensive. It's been a challenge for private institutions to be able to help those students make that education affordable. And of course, we don't want to forget the fact that the students, as they seek where they would like to go to school, they are not simply commodities. This is not a matter, I think when done best, it's not a matter of simply putting oneself out on the market to take sort of the best bidder, the best package. There are many other things which also need to weigh into that and realize that, and families need to realize, of course, that this is an investment in one's life. And so the fact is that for small colleges, for private colleges, as well as in the public context as well, it will remain a challenge, and it won't go away anytime soon.
We're one of the most affordable options in the Commonwealth, less than $7,000 in tuition and fees per year. That's something we want to continue to focus on, and also kind of buttress that price tag with the fact that we have a whole range of scholarships, low interest loans through the federal government, Stafford or Pell Grants. But financial aid to me is one of the most important things that an institution can invest in, is to make sure that access is never closed off, that if a student does want to pursue an education, it can be affordable and it can be accessible.
And I'll just add that the whole financial aid application process is a very complex one, and we're trying to do a better job of educating prospective students and their families about costs. We're even trying to build a new program of financial literacy on campus for students because many are just not well versed in that area in general. I'll also add that within small private colleges, there's something called discounting that happens. So when you think about going out and buying a car and you see the sticker price, that's not the actual price that you end up paying for that automobile. And the same thing's happening in higher education too. And there's been a lot of debate whether discounting should happen. I mean, some institutions are discounting as much as 50%. So if your tuition is $22,000 for the year, you may only be paying $11,000 of that for the year. Converse College, which is a small private institution in South Carolina, has decided to do away with discounting and has reduced its tuition by 42%. And so we're all watching to see what happens with that. But there's been pros and cons associated with that and really not a clear outcome. And so there's still some exploration of that going on.
Just want to add one thing, that this is a issue that's getting heightened attention at the state level and federal level. U.S. government now spends $150 billion a year on financial aid. And this is why you see the administration saying by January 2015, they're going to rate every college in America on affordability and value. No definitions of that yet. There's limited data you have nationally to make that kind of assessment. But I think looking at average debt and default rates across campuses are going to get heightened attention. Long before I got to the University of Kentucky, great attention directed towards this. We continue. I think we, just to share some numbers with you, 50% of our students graduate with no debt. The average debt of those who do have debt is $23,000. There's a rule of thumb you use out there that says your debt should not exceed what you expect to make in your first real job, and that's usually not exceeded in the case of a UK graduate. And also, if you look in Kentucky, using Kentucky data, at the salary differential of one with a high school degree compared to one with a college degree, $23,000 is not an insurmountable bit of debt. You know, and we hate that any of these kids have debt. 85% of our students at the University of Kentucky have financial aid, but it's the value of that degree, and getting back to the points made by my colleagues, how does that translate into the market? Are you prepared for an ever-changing environment where Tom Friedman has written, for this generation, you're going to have to create or reinvent your job more than once? Good question. Another question.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm Dick Kelly from the Lane Report. Kind of a tangential question there with the economic downturn and financial pressures on higher education in Kentucky and so forth, affecting large publics and small privates. In the area of fundraising, an elevated element in part of that solution, but specifically with alumni giving. And this is just kind of a general statistic, but I would imagine in your operations that there's an emphasis on that, but a very high percentage, throw out a number like 90% of alumni giving comes from 10% of those alumni. What can you do, what kind of tactics can you put in place to broaden that base and therefore elevate the amount of revenue that comes to the universities and colleges from their own graduates?
Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll continue on that. But,
All right. You got it.
one of the things that higher education institutions generally and very broadly have had to attend to and continue to attend to with a great deal of scrutiny is to make sure that you are properly staffed and supported in the two areas where the revenue is generated. And that's with the admissions area, bringing students and the student revenue, and in the advancement area. As a matter of fact, I have our advancement VP with me today, so anyone who would like to speak with our fellow, Jim Newberry is here today. The matter of working with alumni is key, and there would be every one of us on the stage who would do that quite a lot. I was until late night last night in Lexington at an alumni gathering with Georgetown alumni. And so the matter of being attentive to that, to making sure that the alumni are well supported, they're aware of what's going on at a college or university, and being a part of that, that's critical to what we do. Again, I have stepped into a situation which in some ways is rather stunning to me, because the Georgetown College situation is one where the institution has been around as a four-year college for over 180 years. And so again, across the state, I've talked with individuals who went to Georgetown College, and their parents went to Georgetown College, and their grandparents went to Georgetown College, and they're generations. And so the depth of that loyalty to Georgetown College is just stunning to me. And so that is something that you try to nurture and capture and benefit from to the greatest extent possible. And it takes having the right people and the leadership and attending to that every day. So a critical area, no doubt.
I would just add that I'll have a chance tomorrow at graduation to make an appeal to the class of 2013. that when that annual fund solicitation comes in the mail, don't toss it away. We don't care how much you give. Excuse me, just get in the habit of thinking about the experience that you had at your alma mater, and to harken back to what I said at the beginning. The experiences you had with that key faculty member who was a mentor, or that program or that scholarship that you received, and to recognize that giving back now, to start young, this huge transfer of wealth that's happening intragenerationally right now, we certainly hope it'll come to higher education, because I would argue that's the best investment we can make as a society, to have an educated populace. But you're exactly right. We've got to train young people now to get away from that inverted pyramid that you're talking about, where only 10% of the people are giving 90% of the donations. That's true. I mean, it's not unique to any particular college. That's kind of, I think, across the country. So my argument would be to get them, and I started in fundraising at the University of Utah, to get people giving at a young age, regardless of the amount, and have them have those feelings of trying to give back and think of what a difference a scholarship made in their life.
John?
I was talking with the president of Berea College yesterday, and he said they have an advancement staff of 30. Midway College has an advancement staff of 2. Our vice president for advancement is here today, Scott Fitzpatrick. Every institution is so different. We're different in terms of the size of our offices, the emphasis on fundraising, our alumni base, the possibilities of philanthropy. And I will point out with Midway College, we started out as the Kentucky Female Orphan School. We were working with disadvantaged and orphan students so that they could be trained to become teachers. We evolved and became Pinkerton High School, became Midway Junior College, and then finally Midway College today. But we were a relatively young 4-year institution. We began offering baccalaureate degrees in 1989 and just started master's degrees in 2008. So we don't have necessarily that strong base to begin with. And then we have some alums that are in rewarding careers, but maybe not very lucrative ones, so that can make a difference too. There hasn't been necessarily a lot of outreach in our advancement office. That's something that we're trying to correct. We're trying to connect with alumni and make sure that we do increase participation.
Very good.
Okay. I'm Mary Crowley-Schmidt with the Area Agency on Aging, your other AAA. And we're part of the ad district here in the Bluegrass. And as you are aware, the Bluegrass is actually turning gray. Every day is going to look like senior shopping day at Kroger in about 10 years. So, Dr. Marston, you have a gerontology background, and I heard you allude to non-traditional students. There are many older folks that are seeking jobs well into their 60s and 70s, and I wondered how the institutions of higher learning are addressing this.
And we have students that range in age from 18 all the way up to 62 right now. Non-traditional students are those usually age 25 and older, but it is the fastest growing segment of the student population according to data that I have seen. We're actually looking at exploring a summer program for seniors. Right now we piloted 2 summer camps last year that were geared towards youth. We're trying to expand that. We're trying to add additional programs for youth, but we're also looking at the possibility of working and offering opportunities for senior citizens in Woodford County too. There's one thing that's also been very beneficial is that the home place at Midway is under construction right now, and it's Kentucky's first greenhouse senior living community, and it's going to be located directly across the street from Midway College. And we're fortunate that our Dean of Health Sciences, Dr. Barbara Kitchen, has been part of that task force and very involved with the development of that program, which took many years. We see that as a wonderful partnership so that our nursing students will have clinical sites. At the same time, we'll be able to bring those residents up to campus for co-curricular programming and those great athletic events that we have. And, you know, we're looking at it's something that we need to build into our curriculums as well, how to deal with an aging society. We talk about student populations that are growing, but actually those over the age of 65 are the fastest growing segment of the U.S. population. While the rest of the population grew about 9%, I think for those over age 65 it grew 15% recently. And we often hear about those over the age of 100 being the fastest segment of the senior population, fastest growing segment.
Mike, Dwayne, want to add anything?
In terms of specific programs that Georgetown would have that would be geared to an older population, I'm not sure of that in detail at this point. We have a Masters of Education program, which has been very successful for a number of years, and there are older students primarily who are in that Master of Education program. I don't think of an undergraduate program right now that's specifically geared towards that population, but again, we'll continue to give it a look, yes.
And I'll just add, we're looking at a Master of Science in Nursing, and one of the concentrations would be gerontology. We're also looking at that as a concentration within our psychology program, too.
This is a specific example that applies to all of us up here, but 93% of university college presidents in America are 50 or older. So I fit in that 7% below that mark. And it really falls to us, and this is one thing that Rob's doing with the consortium, is training up the next generation of academic leaders that want to be university and college presidents. I will tell you, it's the best job in the world. We get to come to a campus every day and be surrounded with young people who are at this pivot point in their lives, and to try and exert some positive influence on them to make good decisions is incredibly gratifying. So those of you who want jobs like ours, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. But it really
I don't want to give mine up anytime soon.
But it really does fall to us to train up that next generation, too.
Yeah, well said. I know we operate on Bob Quick's standard time here at Lexington Commerce. I'm turning to our host, and I know he wants, for a busy crowd, to give them time to wrap things up. And I just want to add before you do, Bob, thinking of Danny's remarks earlier, and knowing that the strongest predictor of health and wealth in a community is education, I would agree that Kentucky has some new champions, new weapons in our arsenal to make our future even brighter. So I want to thank these three gentlemen for being outstanding panelists this morning.
Thank you.